What is up? What is up? Welcome back to another episode of Talkative. Thank you guys for joining me on this Tuesday morning. We're back for more of the show. I appreciate it for each and every one of you who take the time to listen. Few topics for this week, all tech episode this week. A few things we're going to be discussing. One being Microsoft plans to bring ads to free-to-play games, and two, we're going to be going over Apple's M2 chips and their entire rumored and potential computer lineup for the predecessor of the M1 chip lineup as well. If you guys want more of this stuff, please let me know down in the comments. I've yet to do this yet because I say to myself, I think I find it to be very shallow to plug the comments and plug the channel like this, but it really does help. Like, that's not me trying to sound cliche or anything. If you guys run into the podcast and you guys like the content, please subscribe, please leave a like, please leave a comment. No set like goals for right now. I'm trying to be as transparent as possible with, like, promoting the channel. Because I know a lot of people say, oh, we have another typical YouTube channel forcing promos upon their fans and their audience. No, it's just, I haven't done it yet because it's like, okay, I really don't want to be pushy with the promo. But yeah, if you guys like the content and you enjoy the content, you guys would like to hear more and see more, please let me know down in the comments and by leaving a like and subscribing. If you want to be a part of the Talkative team, the Talkative community, feel free to subscribe and be a part of it. We also have a Discord that I haven't really plugged in any of my social medias yet, but we also have a Discord server. So if you guys want to be a part of that, feel free to let me know. So we're going to be starting off with Microsoft and their plans to bring in advertisements to free-to-play games. Now, I'm just going to jump here and say that this is not nothing new. Advertisements in paid games were actually a major thing in the early to mid 2000s, where you have companies, particularly like EA, Electronic Sports, implementing ads to paid games, and a majority of their franchises like NHL, Madden NFL, and all of that sorts. Burnout, all their major EA franchises had advertisements. And the thing is, like, it can be annoying, but at the same time, it's not really okay, for starts, what Microsoft is doing here is actually pretty good. Like, I condemn this because Microsoft's intent isn't really. I'm just gonna jump back to Microsoft really quick here. They're not trying to take any cut of the ad revenue when implementing ads to free to play games. And the thing about free to play games and developers of free to play games, their only major source of ad revenue, if you think about it, is microtransactions and the online marketplace that they have for their cosmetics. That's like their only main way that these games make money, right? So in a way, it's good because Microsoft wants to bring in a more larger audience to these games, and it's just an extra source of ad revenue for these companies, which is always a plus. So yeah, I feel like it's good because developers who make free to play games, their heart goes into the sole fact that you can enjoy the game that we make and don't have to spend a single penny on it. And when it comes to paid games, paid AAA games, majority of the revenue comes from people who buy the copies, comes from people who pre-order copies. So, like I said, the fact that Microsoft isn't going to be taking the cut with this ad revenue program they're going to plan to be implementing in Xbox free-to-play games, you got to condemn something like that. They're allowing the company that's being advertised and the developer of these games to share the money, to share what goes in, or the revenue that they receive from these ads. So, I mean, it's a win-win. It's a win for the company that's being advertised, and it's a win for the developer as well. And Microsoft isn't being involved in taking part of the money whatsoever. So, when I was reading on this for research on this episode, I was like, wow, this is actually, pretty good. And on that note, the ads won't really disrupt gameplay. The ads won't disrupt gameplay as they'll try to find ways to implement them in a very, um, you know, small way, like not disrupting gameplay and not taking time out of your gameplay session, whether you're playing a multiplayer game or single player story game, and that's good. It says here from the article that I got from The Verge that they'll probably start by implementing them on billboards and a lot of sports games or even racing games. So obviously, in talks of a billboard, you're not going to be focused on the billboard, or you're not going to devote all your attention on the billboard, so it won't be disrupting your gameplay. It'll be kind of like, you know, you won't even probably notice the ad, but at least the ad is still being put there and promoted there. So no disruption of the gameplay, no ad revenue being taken from Microsoft. I find it to be a win-win for these free-to-play game developers, to be honest. I feel like this would be a good program for both parties, the companies and these developers as well. Like I said, it's a new stream of revenue outside of microtransactions, microtransactions. And to think about a microtransaction system, a lot of companies really, really handle this poorly. They really do. Two of them that I can think of is Crystal Dynamics with their Marvel Avengers online marketplace, and EA Sports. These are two companies that make phenomenal games, to say the least. I know people like to complain and ramble and rant about how sports games aren't really changed much on a yearly basis. They're basically untouched, right? Yes, but the core game itself, and with Madden NHL, outside of the box, EA, they know how to make sports games. Is what I'm trying to get at here. That's what I'm trying to imply. They're really good at what they do. Same thing with Crystal Dynamics. Crystal Dynamics, on the gameplay, graphically standpoint, they made a phenomenal game. Really good game with a lot of good potential. This probably Marvel's Avengers could have been and should have been one of the best Marvel games to ever exist. Point blank. Take that as you will, but that's my take on that. If Marvel's Avengers was handled a lot better, that game could have been game of the year. So it's the fact that I don't even want to blame the developers themselves, because I say this time and time again. Developers don't have the fault for the lack of content or how good or how bad a game is performing. They are just there to program and code whatever the higher ups decide what is best for the game or best for the business. They're not there to make executive decisions unless they have all the power to do so. Because I feel like, well, I could be wrong here, but I feel like some developers do have a say on what should be implemented into a game, or what should be added to a game, or what should be changed. But majority of them are just there to program what they were told to program, what they were asked to program. The real issue here is the executive decisions from CEOs, managers, creative directors, so forth. Everyone who's in the highest of the hierarchy when it comes to a game development studio or the game development industry. They are the ones that call the shots, right? So at the end of the day, people cannot bash a developer or go on different social media forums like subreddits, Twitter communities, or Discords and bash a developer for how bad a game is performing. The only way that I could see this happening if a company has a bad track record of not implementing features properly to a game. Like if developers physically cannot code a feature properly or code in addition to a game properly, then okay, that makes sense. But if a developer is just trying to code what a higher up decides would be best for a game, you cannot be mad at the developer for doing so, because they're literally doing their job. That's all they're doing. If you really want to rant and put blame, quote unquote, on someone, it would be the higher ups. It would be the managers. It would be the creative directors, because they call the shots. They decide, okay, we can try out this DLC and see how this will do in the next coming months, or we can add this feature, or as all hell, like a lot of game development companies are used to doing, is taking away certain features, either on monthly based updates or on a yearly release. They either take away features, bring them back, whatever. It's a whole roller coaster when it comes to game development on that regard, right? So yeah, I really, I'm transitioning to a different tangent here, but just give me a second because I need to get this through. I've said this before, the whole thing about not blaming game developers, and I'll keep saying that. I'll keep preaching it because I find it unfair that game developers get, death threats, or they get made fun of, or they get crap talked all over them. When again, it's not their call, whatever's added to the game. Blame the higher ups, blame creative directors. You know, that's really how I just see it. Either way, I just wanted to put that out there. I just wanted to make that clear. Do not go on subreddits, do not go on Twitter communities and blame the developer for how poorly a game is doing, right? Like I was saying with Crystal Dynamics and how EA are two major examples of how poorly they handle microtransactions and how they rather prioritize making money with the microtransaction system rather than satisfying the fan base and giving the fans what they want. Crystal Dynamics has been doing that with Marvel Avengers. If you guys played Marvel Avengers, you would know that the lack of content is very absurd in that game. Now, don't get me wrong, like I said, the game isn't bad. The campaign, the story was phenomenal, the gameplay is phenomenal, the abilities, the animation, the combat, the visuals, it's great. It's a great team-based, team up with your buddies, get with your buddies, and do some missions, level up your characters. It has a great, I feel like it has a, or, I don't want to say all that great, but it has a pretty decent RPG system to it, right? But after you're done with the story, after you do most of the multiplayer missions and all that type of stuff, after you level up your characters, there's really not much more you can do. And for the fact that the game isn't 100% open world, it's really not. It's really, it's gated sections of maps and cities and locations. They're big, but they're not big enough for you to really explore and have that open world feel, right? So after you're done with the core stuff for all the game, there's pretty much not much more you can do. And then you ask yourself, okay, where's the content? So months go by. I'm just gonna give you guys a little bit of a recap of how the story of this game went, and then we'll go back to what's scheduled. This is the thing about a podcast, man, that you have your scheduled discussions, but every show that you record, there's always gonna be a time where you get distracted, you get sidetracked, and that's fine. That's fine. That's how conversations in general go. It doesn't have to be on a podcast, on a radio show, or interviews. You just get distracted, and that's completely fine. As long as I'm still talking about video games and tech and not rambling about anything else, we're good. But like I was saying, months go by, they release countless expansions for countless heroes. You have Kate Bishop, you have Hawkeye, Black Panther, which was one of the biggest ones for that game, and till this day I find it to be the best DLC ever. And then you kind of have a little bit of a downfall with the Spider-Man release, right? Spider-Man didn't release with the story, just the character itself. Spider-Man as a character, he has alright combat. The combat isn't all that great, but it's not bad for the hero. I actually found it to be really fun to play as Spider-Man, but the lack of missions and the lack of cutscenes or dialogue or interactions with the character, character dynamics with other characters or villains, Spider-Man villains, was really, really present, and it showed, and it added up over time, and it made that DLC to be one of the most lackluster releases of all time for that game, that is. So you have that. So all these major expansions releases, right? And throughout this process, throughout this time period, the company has been going off with like a lot of controversy in terms of communication and how poorly they've been communicating with the fans in terms of updates or, tweeting out what's going on with the game itself, any roadmaps, potential for the future. So that's just one thing to add on in terms of the marketplace. This is where this company makes most of their money because if you guys don't know, every DLC for that game is free. Costs you nothing, not a single penny to buy and play as Black Panther, Kate Bishop, Hawkeye, or Spider-Man. It's all free, right? The game itself is base game price, but the DLC content does not cost you a penny, one bit. So, obviously, their main source of revenue and money is going to be coming out from the microtransaction system in the marketplace. I'm just going to go off rip and say that there are multiple times that they've released skins in that marketplace that are not worth, hear me out on this one, $15 to $20 a skin, because that's how much the skins cost in that game. And that's what I'm trying to get at when it comes to companies prioritizing money over quality, right? Money over value of the overall game. Instead of releasing some game breaking feature or different game modes, I could ramble on all day about how that game, Marvel's Avengers, could have really been put on the map for all Marvel games out there, and really gave some, well, okay, no, I was gonna say it could have really gave Insomniac a run for their money, but Insomniac and Crystal Dynamics developed two different type of games, right? Put it that way. But this game could have been, like I said, and I'm gonna re-elaborate, I'm gonna restate, one of the best co-op slash multiplayer Marvel games today. If it was treated with love, if it was treated right from the get-go, from the very first release dropped, which is Kate Bishop. But this company went out on a limb and said, okay, we're just gonna prioritize money. We're just not gonna give a shit about releasing updates for roadmaps or adding quality to life features for our game. We're just gonna prioritize money. And that's where you fail as a game development company. Is when you prioritize different methods to make money over your fan base and the overall lifespan of your game. That's where you fail. Same thing goes for EA Sports. EA Sports has had a reputation of overcharging for their player packs on both Madden and FIFA, right? If you guys play those games, you would know how outrageous it is to pay for a pack of players in my ultimate team and you don't even get anything that's worth that price. Another example, Apex Legends. Now, I could be wrong with this. You guys can feel free to correct me. But EA is the publisher for Apex Legends. I say to myself, could EA really be involved with how the skins, everything cosmetic wise for that game is handled? Heirlooms, Apex packs, skins, weapon skins, emotes, all the above. There's gotta be some EA involvement with this marketplace for these skins too, because it's the same thing. Apex Legends skins for these legends, they're not that bad, but there are definitely some skins that you just look, when you go to the market section of the game, you just look at these skins and you say to yourself, what the hell is this? You really assume that I'm going to be paying $15 to $20 up front for this skin? That, mind you, skins are only able to be seen in the main lobby, when you're not in the game, when you're doing an emote, or from another player's POV. You get what I mean? And oh my god, listen, that's a whole nother conversation too, is cosmetics in first-person games or first-person shooters. Do I really find them worth the penny? Do I really find them worth the grind, the investment? You know, that's for a whole nother day. We can ramble about this forever, but I'm gonna try not to. I'm gonna try to get back on schedule with the topics. But yeah, like I was saying, dude, like a lot of these companies prioritize money over value, or the satisfaction of their fan base, and it's just sad. It really is. And again, it's not the fault of the people who build the game. It's the people who decide for the game, who make decisions for the game, not the people who build the game. So yeah, I just wanted to make that clear. Again, I know it was a whole different tangent, but that's just the beauty of a podcast. You can have separate conversations that are related to the topics that you're talking about and still make sense no matter what. But again, going back to the whole ad program for free-to-play games from Microsoft, like we've mentioned previously, I'm just going to do a little bit of a quick recap. Microsoft won't be taking any cut in the revenue and will allow the developer and the company that's being advertised to share the funds. And this ad program for Xbox could be rolling out as soon as the third quarter of this year, so 2022. If you guys are on Xbox and you have a lot of free-to-play games, you might start seeing ads from legitimate companies, IRL, appear in your game in some way, shape, or form. They don't know how they're going to be implementing the ads in yet. But yeah, honestly, just to recap on this overall, just to give my overall opinion and take, this is great. This is great. This is a win-win for both parties, the companies and the developers, because free-to-play games, the base game is free. Some updates, some content updates gradually could be free, won't cost you a penny. Their main source of revenue is either DLC or microtransactions. So this is the best way to just give a little bit of more money to these developers and to bring more attraction to the platform as well. Because that's one of the main things. They want to attract more developers of free-to-play games to the platform. So honestly, this is a win. This is a win for Microsoft, and this is a win for those developers. I was a little skeptical on it at first because I initially thought that these were going to be ads that would appear while you're playing the game and that they would be disruptive. And I'm like, oh gosh, you're telling me that not only in streaming platforms like Peacock, Netflix, Crunchyroll, where ads in those type of platforms are already annoying as they are, you're gonna bring the same thing to gaming now? And no, it seems like that's not the case as of now, because when they were asked questions, Microsoft were asked questions from The Verge and Insider, they couldn't really give any more information from what they already have to give or to say on. So we don't really know. We don't know if direction for this program could change shape over time or what could happen in the future. But this is really, really good. I feel like this is a plus for these companies overall. And oh yeah, back to the whole ads being disruptive and everything. There was a comment on the article saying that Microsoft fears that the ads implemented could irritate quote-unquote players. And to counteract this, the company plans on building a private marketplace to only let select brands into the ad program. So this is good because they can decide what they want to advertise and who is being advertised. And this will be great because probably it won't be as many ads in the games as it's planned to be, because it's only a select amount of brands. It's only a few amount of brands in this private marketplace. Like I said, we'll see how this comes into fruition over time. It's set to be out by this year. I'm not an Xbox, but I will follow up with this and see how it's developing. I'm on PlayStation, so obviously we're not having free-to-play ad programs. But like I said, I'm interested to see how this is gonna work out as we go. But yeah, like I said, this is great. I'm all on board with this. More money for the companies, more just cooperation, just big value overall, and the fact that two main things, it won't disrupt gameplay, it won't really disrupt the fans, and Microsoft isn't taking a bit of the revenue. Kudos and props to Microsoft for this. But with that being said, we're going to transition to the second and final segment of this week's episode, and that is M2 lineup. That's right, we're going to be having a predecessor to the M1 chips, which are already impressive as they are performance-wise. There's more Macs, there's more computers, and there's more chips. So, Mark Gurman from Bloomberg, if you guys are really heavy when it comes to tech leaks and just rumors and all that type of stuff, Apple News or tech news in general, Mark Gurman is a really reliable source. He has a really high track record on Apple track. If I stand corrected, he's definitely in the high 80s. I don't know what exact percentage he has of accuracy, but he's up there. He's pretty reliable when it comes to his leaks. So he says, from an article in The Verge, that he's seen evidence of M2 powered MacBook Air and a 10-core GPU. Now, this has been rumored for a while. A new version of the MacBook Air with the M2 chip. But we're not sure if the M2 would be any different compared to the M1 lineup when it comes to performance. And based off this article, the base M2 chip won't be the only chip that's being developed. It's actually going to be an M2 Pro and an M2 Max. So pretty much the same flow that Apple went with the M1 lineup. They're doing the same thing here with the M2. Higher end machines will reportedly have M2 Pro and M2 Max chips, like I just said, with the Max having a 12-core GPU and 38 graphic cores. That's pretty impressive. 38 cores for these M2 chips. So right here shows that obviously the Max and Pro version of these chips are going to be better in performance than the base M2 chip. And from the videos that I've seen, the MacBook Air with the M2 chip is pretty much going to have the base M2 with 10-core GPU. These M2 Pro and M2 Max chips are going to be likely for newer versions of the Mac Pro, the big boy Mac machine, and new versions of the Mac Mini and iMac coming out in the future. So just keep that in mind. Like I said, 2 CPU and 6 GPU cores extra compared to the current M1 Max. So yes, this is where you can see that yes, the M2 lineup, at least the Pro and the Max version of the chips, are going to be better than the M1 lineup overall. M2 Pro also shows up as an option for the Mac Mini. Garmin predicts that the Mac Pro will have a successor to the M1 Ultra, and I elaborated on this. I said in parentheses M2 Ultra. So could we really have not just a predecessor to a whole lineup, but a predecessor to Apple's largest and best performance chip that they have now, which is the M1 Ultra? Could we have a predecessor to that? Which I can imagine the Geekbench scores and the overall performance scores that we're gonna see from this chip if it does happen. But yeah, this is really exciting. The fact that Apple is just expanding on their overall silicon project and just making more chips. It's crazy because I looked up the base M1 chip came out in November of 2020. It hasn't really been 2 years yet. And they're already making a whole another lineup or predecessor to their base M1 lineup. So I'm telling you, man, silicon on Apple Silicon. I've been saying silicon. My apologies. Apple Silicon will have a whole predecessor, and this could be game changing for computers, I say, in my opinion. So just a few other notes to wrap up on this section. Oh, on that note, if you guys are not aware, WWDC 2022, Apple themselves have already confirmed it, is scheduled for June 6th. So if you guys, and this is where iOS 16 is going to be revealed, which, by the way, we have some bad news for iOS 16. I'm just going to add it to this episode since this is an all-tech episode overall. iOS 16 will not be getting a major redesign, unfortunately. And in terms of leaks and news, there's been very little regarding what's to come for iOS 16. But we shall see if Apple is going to be really ready to surprise us come June 6th. But just a section that I wanted to discuss and read from this article that I didn't really get to jot down. So, like I said, the entry-level MacBook Pro may stick around. So this is the MacBook Pro that didn't really have the larger display, 14 to 60 inch, like the MacBook Pro that came out in 2021 with the M1 Pro and Max chips. This is pretty much going to be what that computer was, unchanged, with the touch bar as well. So I know a lot of people are not a fan of the touch bar, but the base MacBook Pro, the entry-level MacBook Pro that's going to be shipping with the base M2 chip is going to remain unchanged. So yeah, that base entry-level MacBook Pro is going to be unchanged, and more than likely it's going to be shipping with the base M2 chip as well. So yeah, in terms of the big iMacs and the big Mac computers, there's not a rumored successor to that as of now. I mean, there's no speculation that we're going to be getting a new version of the iMac Pro, or the Mac Pro, I should say, anytime soon. But overall, I mean, there's rumors for Mac Minis, which is kind of strange because, I mean, the Mac Studio is out now, so the fact that they're still going to be releasing versions of the Mac Mini with different chips, interesting to see what Apple decides to do there on that front. But in terms of MacBook Pros, we're gonna be getting an entry level MacBook Pro or MacBook Air. No, MacBook Pro, I should say, because they're calling it the MacBook Pro, even though it's really just a MacBook Air. But we shall see. With a new lineup, with new chips, and like I said, rumored iMacs, or not iMacs, I should say, rumored Mac Minis and rumored MacBook Pros with these M2 chips lined up. So exciting stuff. Like I said, Apple's just really expanding on their silicon lineup and just overall their silicon project, making their own chips. So we shall see. Also, we do not. Well, it's really just a rumor as of now, but people are saying, because this has happened before, WWDC has had moments in the past where Apple would literally unveil and reveal hardware on a software main show and conference. So we could be getting a big hardware surprise come WWDC. We don't know if it's going to be the Mac Pro, the big Mac machine, or if it's going to be the entry-level base MacBook Pro or MacBook Air with the M2 chip. We shall see as months come in, but not much time to the WWDC really, and I'll be watching that show and I'll be reviewing that show here in the podcast when that comes around. So with that being said, that's it for today. We hit 34 minutes today. Not bad for an episode, I say. Like, well, aside from the discussions and tangents that I got into, this probably would have been a much shorter episode, but it's all right. That being said, thank you guys for joining me this week. I'll leave you guys with the disability fact on the screen. This was episode 17. I'll see you guys next week for episode 18. Thank you and take care. Bye-bye.